can play, I really can. Wave and play, the violin gets the win. Make my claim, breathe it in, born again, feeling fine.
Hello and welcome to a conversation with Mr. David Ragsdale of Kansas. I'm your host, Eric Miller. This is part of the Pods and Sods network, and it was a real treat to speak to David. I'm a massive Kansas fan, and we go into that quite a bit. I wanted to talk to him specifically about a Kansas album that's one of my favorites, 1995's Freaks of Nature, and we go track by track on that record and sort of frame other elements of his career with Kansas around that. So it was a real nice conversation, and for those not familiar, David has been, I guess he sort of had two runs with Kansas. He's their second violin player. Robbie Steinhardt would have been the original that many of you are probably familiar with, but David's been with them, like I said, off and on through the 90s and to present day and beyond. And we talk about their new record, which they're recording, and I'm super excited about. So I hope you enjoy. So without any further ado, let's talk to David Ragsdale and go track by track on Freaks of Nature. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my guest today. He's a member of one of my all-time favorite bands. My first concert ever, actually, when I was just a wee 11 years old. I saw Kansas, and I've seen them probably, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 times at this point, in all iterations. And this gentleman's been with them for two stretches so far, from 91 to 97, and then back in, I think, 2006 to the present. That would be a violinist, Mr. David Ragsdale. Welcome, David.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How about you?
As well as can be.
Great. So just what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on what I think is kind of an underrated or maybe forgotten record in the Kansas catalog, and that's Freaks of Nature from 1995. But before we jump into that, David, can you give me a little bit about your background? You're originally from Atlanta?
Columbus, actually. Columbus, Georgia.
Okay.
Is where I grew up. Spent some time in Montgomery, Alabama, but mostly I grew up in Columbus, Georgia.
Okay. And about what age did you start playing? When did you pick up the violin? Three or four, something like that. It was my mother's. It was my mother's doing. I really wasn't that terribly interested in it, and really didn't get interested in it until late teens, like maybe 17, 18 years old before I actually developed a desire to play the violin. Right. Do you remember what it was that kind of flipped the switch for you?
A lot of it. I tell you, it actually started when I was closer to maybe 16. Believe it or not, I was driving around in Columbus, had the radio on, and I heard what I am pretty sure was "Can I Tell You?" It was either "Can I Tell You" or "Bringing It Back."
Wow.
On the radio, and heard a violin in a rock band. That was the first time I'd ever heard that. I was familiar with Jean-Luc Ponty, and I thought that was real cool. And Jerry Goodman, who I still admire greatly. Right. Jean-Luc Ponty as well, but Jerry Goodman, I have an affinity for Jerry Goodman. He's
right.
An outstanding player. So that's what really made me start going, hey, maybe this isn't such a bad idea after all, And then I saw a friend of mine who won a competition to play a concerto with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. He was my age, maybe a year younger, and that was the first time I realized really the power of the violin. I had just never really paid that much attention to it, and that got me going, hey, wait a minute.
Right, right. Like up until then, it sounds like maybe it was a bit of a chore, right? Or
Oh, I never once pulled it out of the case unsupervised.
right.
Never once. Never once.
That's really cool.
It was all but manacles, you know.
Right. That's cool. And what kind of so those songs obviously are on Kansas's first album. Like what did you listen to kind of in your, formative years music wise?
When I was in early high school, I was Led Zeppelin. I was real into Johnny and Edgar Winter.
Right.
And then a friend of mine, I was into, rock, serious rock. And then a friend of mine came over with a recording by Focus. I don't know if you remember the band Focus.
Yeah, I remember the name,
named Jan Ackerman.
Right.
And that started me into the progressive mode. And all of a sudden we were listening to Yes and Genesis, and then here comes Kansas all of a sudden. And we just went cuckoo over Song for America. I mean, we sat there and listened to that album for days.
Right.
So I was maybe 17 at that point when I started really listening to, prog, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And then, started listening to a lot of jazz, and my taste expanded, and I started listening to a whole lot of classical music as well.
Right.
At that point, which to me, prog basically is the incorporation of really classical influences to rock.
Right, of course.
Everyone has their own definition, but that's mine.
Right. That makes sense. So were you gigging out? Were you kind of coveted as a violinist in this sort of new Kansas prog world?
No, I was a guitar player then.
Okay.
I started playing guitar when I was maybe 14, 15.
Okay.
Seriously, I mean, I had a little acoustic guitar that I strummed around on when I was a kid, but I started really focusing on electric guitar when I was 15 maybe, and got actually quite good, if I do say so myself. I'm still a better guitar player than I will ever be a violinist.
Well, I don't know. That's fair to say, right?
With just a reasonable amount of maybe 6 weeks of intense practice, I would be once again a far better guitar player than I will ever be a violinist.
Right. Well, you have played guitar from time to time with Kansas on stage.
Uh-huh.
You're often one of the things that is often sort of mentioned in your bio is studio work you did I guess through the early 90s and stuff, and the one that always jumps out or gets mentioned is the Smashing Pumpkins. You did some
that was the big one.
Right. So you did Disarm and Luna on their Siamese Dream, correct?
Uh-huh.
How did that come to be?
That really, Kansas recorded Live at the Whiskey in, what was that, 93 maybe? And we mixed it at Triclops Studios here in Atlanta, which is where the Smashing Pumpkins came in maybe a year later to record Siamese Dream. And they were requesting Atlanta symphony players, and the guys at the studio said, remembering Live at the Whiskey, they said, no, who you're really looking for is this guy. And they got in touch with me through Phil Ehart, our drummer and manager, the manager of the band Kansas. And that's how that came to pass. Right.
That's really cool. Every time I hear that on the radio, I feel the obligation to point, hey, that's David Ragsdale from Kansas, to point it out to whoever's in the room. So, you also did work with a
really good cello player too. A guy named Eric, I can't remember his last name. The cellist he was a very fine player. He was really good.
Yeah, it turned out great. And that's certainly, on that song, Disarm especially is, kind of makes the song in a lot of ways. He also did some work with Jason Bonham and Marty Fredrickson's Motherland album and Queensryche Sign of the Times.
I did. A couple of songs on there.
How were those experiences?
They were sessions. You're hired to do a thing and you go in and do it. You don't under those parameters, you tend to not get terribly personally involved because you're an employee.
Right.
So you kind of do what is asked of you.
Right.
and hope for a good result. And both of those seem to be really good results.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned the Live at the Whiskey CD and video. That was kind of your first sort of recorded introduction to the world of Kansas. But we're going to get into your actual first studio, and I guess maybe so far your only studio, right? With the exception of what
So far.
Right, and we'll get to that later, which I'm very excited about, by the way. So just some yeah, I'm sure. So just some info about Freaks of Nature. It was released on May 30th, 1995, produced by Jeff Glicksman, longtime Kansas producer. It was recorded at Caribbean Sound Basin in Trinidad, which is, I guess, a small island off the coast of Venezuela.
It's a pretty big island, really.
Is it?
Yeah, it's well, I mean, for an island, yeah, it's pretty large.
That's kind of an off the beaten path,
Yeah, kind of.
destination for. And I guess I had heard that maybe Jeff Glicksman found that location. Do you have any memories about how that came or why you ended up there?
I'm no, not. My best guess is that for one thing, it was an outstanding facility.
Was it?
I mean, they had all. It was owned by the guy who basically, I guess, he kind of ran the country of Trinidad.
Right.
And it was a very well constructed studio. All the things you're looking for just in construction. Outstanding wood. They had all these imported woods, and there was this one wall that had wooden shutters that could be opened or closed depending on what kind of wood sound you were looking for.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and they were huge. They were like the room was maybe 50 feet tall by maybe another 50 feet wide, and the shutters. There were no windows. They were just shutters on a naked wall. Well, I don't think it was naked though. I think it was soundproof. The wall was soundproof. The shutters were some kind of exotic wood that could be shut so that you could get the wood sound, or they could be open so that you could have the dead, soundproofed sound. I mean, it was just a spectacular facility. They had those Mitsubishi 2-inch machines.
Right.
Which were state of the art at the time, and just outstanding outboard gear. I mean, it was a very impressive facility.
And were you there
and
for?
I think we got it at a really good rate.
Well, I think that studio. I tried to do some research on them. I think they mostly do like calypso type of music, or I couldn't find many like rock bands that went through there.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
the guy that owned the studio was very wealthy, and I think he may have just wanted to do it,
Right.
and did it really well. I don't think he was looking beyond too much. I mean, I'm sure he had desire to bear fruit with it, but how it is with the extraordinarily wealthy, they'll do something just to do it.
Right.
This is pure conjecture. I'm not stating fact. This is just kind of the impression that I got from being down there.
And were you there for? Were you there for a long time? Like, how long did recording take?
I was there for like 6 or 7 weeks, I guess, and spent one of the weeks up on a what is a little island off the coast of Trinidad, Tobago, which is kind of like Trinidad's Miami. That's
Okay.
where everyone goes to hang out and vacation and be on the beach and everything. So I spent a week off there, just kind of hanging out, going, "Wow, this is amazing."
Wow. Wow. You're probably thinking, why didn't we do this sooner, guys? So one thing about this record is the cover photo. We like to talk about the artwork. I did a little research in that. I don't know if you're aware that man on the photo is Jojo the Russian dog-faced boy.
Yeah.
Do you know about that?
Yeah, I do.
There was
And I can remember seeing that at the back of comic books, when I was much younger. I can remember seeing that photo.
Right. Oh, the very same one. Yeah.
Yeah,
how did that?
And I think actually the name of the book was Freaks of Nature. I think the name of the book that they were advertising was Freaks of Nature.
Oh, okay. So that's where that would have came from.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. So shall we jump into it track by track? You have some co-writes
Sure.
on here, which is very exciting. So Kicking off the first side, first song written by yourself and Steve Walsh would be I Can Fly.
I can fly. I'm not distressed. I can fly. You have to know this. Leave the earth. Make my climb. Right in there. I don't care. Feel it burn. Don't say I'm crazy. Don't say I'm out of my head. I might be crazy, but one thing for certain, one thing for sure. I can fly above the sea. I can fly. Look at me. Without a net. Leave it behind. Right in there. I don't care. Feel it so high.
Any memories about sort of how this song came together?
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, this is a long time ago, and I'm sober since. So a lot of this is I'm going to have to really, call back. But I had it was really I had written what was basically the first 3 minutes as a little instrumental thing, and it was much more polite than what I played it for Steve, and Steve was all into it and took it home and came back about 2 days later with a much more aggressive approach, which
Right.
I really dug. Mine was very polite and kind of melodic and cute, and Steve turned it into this sort of epic, in-your-face, bombastic. It was very cool. And then he also added lyrics and a vocal melody, which I had not incorporated in the what I had played for him.
Right. So when you're writing with him, he typically would do the lyrics and you would do the music, kind of similar.
He did way more than lyrics. He completely changed the complexion. I mean, like I said, mine was sort of almost pop. It was almost a pop presentation, and he added the the really aggressive in
Right.
your face. He did a whole lot more than just lyric work on that.
Right. Right. The rhythm really just like drives in this one. It's a,
Yeah, with mine it was like
Right.
No.
Right. Right. This song also has like a really like a huge bridge punctuated by, some beautiful violin interludes. Does that just kind of come out in the studio, or was that part of when he brought it back?
It may have, and that may, I don't remember everything that went into that. That little violin thing may have been an entirely other thing that I had tucked away, and Steve said, "Let's put that here."
Right.
I kind of think that's what happened with that. And then, of course, he did what he does. He took what I had presented and completely changed the complexion of it.
Right. And for the better in the long run, you sort of prefer, you liked the direction he took it in?
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, it was much more. I mean, yeah, it was huge. It went from polite and respectful to just this huge in your face. It was. I was doing backflips over it.
Nice. You're like, holy moly, that's my song.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds great.
That's cool. One thing at this point, Steve Walsh you sort of joined in '91, and a lot of fans are, Kansas was kind of doing the club tour at that point, right? And it was maybe
it was clubs interspersed. We did the clubs to pay for the bus,
right? Okay,
or buses. We had real gigs but those buses are so expensive, and you do the club dates to pay for the bus, and then you do the big gigs because that's what you want to do. It was a big club gig,
right?
kind of a thing.
Yeah, that I was talking to somebody once about another band, and they gave me the dollar amount of how much it costs just to keep the band on the road per day, right? So any day.
Man, this was in the '90s when $1,000 was a lot of money,
right?
And it was about $1,200 a day,
right?
Per bus, and there was a large period of that 6 years where we were on two buses,
right?
So. That was, it was very expensive.
And if you're not playing, you're still paying, right, for that cost.
Yeah.
One thing about that era that I just adore is, I saw you guys in a couple club venues, and I think with the return of the violin sound, and you can see it and hear it in the whiskey performance. There's just a renewed energy. And I've always been grateful for you bringing that element back, and and sort of.
I was grateful to the band for the opportunity. I chased them around for 4 years before they finally relented.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about that because I've never really heard that story explored a whole lot, but legend has it that you took songs from Power and recorded your own violin parts and sent them in. Is that the truth? That's the way it...
That's accurate.
Did you... Can I ask some questions about that? Did you do...
yeah.
Did you do the whole album, or did you do a couple of songs?
No,
or?
I took spots of Silhouettes in Disguise. I did the song Power. Gosh. I know there was at least one other one, but I can't think of what it might have been right now. Right. And I took segments, 1 minute segments of each song where in my head, I could hear the violin part that wasn't there.
Right.
I expressed that to a friend of mine at one point. I said, I can hear the violin parts. And he said, well, what you need to do then is sit down with your 4-track and put Kansas on 2 tracks and your violin parts on the other tracks and send it to him. I was like, oh, that's a great idea.
That's cool. And you sort of had to navigate the seas to get it into the right hands. I'm assuming that would be Phil Ehart at the time, right?
Yeah, and the connection was a friend of mine who was friends with Kansas's accountant, Marty Rothman, at the time. Okay. A friend of mine managed to get a copy of it to Marty, and Marty, bless his heart, gave it to Phil. And Phil gave me a call out of the blue. I was just floored. He actually left a voice message for me, and boy, was I excited.
No doubt.
I called him back, and they didn't hire me, but he did express, that he was very impressed with my effort. And he and I, kind of stayed in touch over the next 4 years, and then finally he called me up. I was out in L.A., and he called me up and said, we're about to go into the studio. Carrie's written 2 new songs, and we wondered if you wanted to put some violin parts on them.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be great.
What would that have been for?
It was one song called Wheels and another song called When Things Get Electric, and there was the band was being perused by several labels.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I'm not privy to upper echelon decision making conversations. That's done by people who know far more about the industry than I will ever know. But mainly Phil, who is his knowledge of how the record and recording industry runs is pretty encyclopedic. So. For whatever reason, that didn't come to fruition, but we did get 2 cool, studio cuts.
Yeah, Wheels ended up on the box. Wheels was on the box
Yeah,
set.
yeah.
And yeah, it's funny because I didn't know a whole lot about that. And you actually played that out more than once during the club. I remember seeing that live.
We did do it for a little bit.
That's a great song. When Things Get Electric, I think that ended up on something Carrie's solo-wise, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
That's cool. Would you happen to know if that's the same version that he played on?
I doubt it.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. I don't know for a fact.
Any chance that these your home-produced power demos with Violin will ever surface in any way? Like, do you still have them?
I'd have to find a 4-track. I've still got the tape, but I don't have a 4-track player to.
Oh, right.
I'd love to listen to them again.
Yeah, I'm sure the fans would love to hear that. It's part of like the Kansas folklore at this point.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear them just out of curiosity.
If I could find a 4-track cassette player, I could maybe haul them back out.
There you go.
I've got the track. I've got the tape that I did it on.
Yeah, it'd be cool to hear those at some point. But we digress. Moving on to the the second song on Freaks of Nature, written just by Steve. This was kind of the first single. There weren't really singles proper, but there were promotional singles. That would be Desperate Times. Any memories about this one?
It was cool. I remember when we worked it up, and it goes in. All of a sudden, the verse jumps into a very expansive chorus.
Right. Yeah, this has like a really frenetic violin sound over the choruses.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And then you kind of lay out a little bit in the verses.
Well, I'm chugging. In the verses. I'm dun 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 dun. I'm down on the bottom of that chug.
Right.
Got to have something to do.
Right. Yeah, this sort of flows out of I Can Fly. And another sort of highlight of this is this. There's a huge Philly hard drum break.
Oh yeah.
Which is just great, had so much energy. Can you talk about him sort of as a drummer in general? What's it like working with the great Phil Ehart?
Wow. Well, he's one of the guys that defined what progressive drumming. I have an awful lot of respect for my brother is a percussion teacher. For years, he was the chairman of the music department at University of Arkansas, but he's the whole time he's been there, which is over 30 years now. He's been a percussion teacher, and he's come to several of our shows and is just amazed with what Phil does, because he's not really classically trained, but he understands all the intricacies of what is rudimental percussion. He can. I remember Phil one time says, I don't know rudiments. And I told my brother, I said, Phil says he doesn't know rudiments. And my brother said, oh, yeah, he does. He just doesn't know he does.
That's cool. Yeah, never really like overly flashy, but always just, just
I'll tell you, man, his sense of meter is amazing. I use tap tempo delays really almost on every song. And I have for a long time, even when I wasn't in Kansas. And one thing I always noticed in other bands, I would have to reset the tempo of the delay because the tempo had changed. All of a sudden, the tails of the delay were not matching the tempo that was being played. So that means that the drummer had either slowed down or sped up at some point in time.
Right.
But with Phil, I can tap the tempo into the delay at the beginning of the song and never change it. Never.
That's incredible.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, really great. You know, and at this point, these songs, you know, they certainly capture the energy. Like I said, you guys were kind of firing on all cylinders in terms of performance, and you know, I think it you know, it comes out in these recordings, which I think is really nice. Moving on, the next song was kind of the second single. This would be, you know, I guess the ballad would be "Hope Once Again," written by Steve.
Well, I never stopped to realize what was passing me by. But love has a texture. Love has a texture. Catch your glimpse, reflections of what should have, could have been. Pictures and memories. And hope once again. Once again. Once again. Hope once again.
Yeah, you guys would do this one live as well on in the '95 era.
Yeah,
any,
we did.
Any memories about this one?
It was fun to play. It's a beautiful song and message, you know.
Oh yeah, you know, that's a Steve Walsh sort of trademark, I think. Just the power that he can deliver, you know, the emotion in his vocals.
Uh-huh.
You know, and this is one of those, something that I think he was really fantastic at. There's a great violin solo on this. Do you remember that at all?
Oh, thank you. I do. I do, and I don't remember the conception of it. I can't remember if it was conceived in the studio or if I mean, I tend to write my solos. I'm not a clever enough improviser. Some people can improvise extraordinarily memorable solos, and I'm not one of those. I'd much rather put together something, you know, that sounds cohesive,
right,
than to just rattle off a bunch of licks, which is, you know, if I don't compose it, that's what I end up doing.
Right.
That's how I approach that.
Yeah.
But I did like that solo a lot.
It's a really great one. This is one of those songs that, you know, and we'll talk about it, I guess, a little bit later, but you know, you have a new lead singer, Ronnie Platt, who is awesome.
Yes.
And
He is.
it's, you know, this record, none of these songs really make the set list these days. This would be one that I think would just be a splendid choice, because I think this is just a really powerful song.
It is, boy, then the way the violin solo comes out into one of those epic Rich Williams powerhouse melodic, but that's a cool moment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, you know, that guitar solo that he's playing there is like, it's slightly more like, you know, you say melodic, but this one has like a soulful feel to it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, well, everything he does is soulful.
yeah, real nice, really, really nice. And this also has a guest vocalist, Renee Castle.
Oh, that's right.
Doing a couple highlight, I guess, like accent kind of vocals. Which I think live you would sort of fill her vocal parts with violin, if I'm not mistaken.
Or just leave them blank.
Right.
Out of respect, if you know, if they weren't going to be done correctly, we'd probably just leave them blank. They were embellishments, very cool embellishments, but just out of respect for the performance, I think that if outside of having someone there doing it, we would just leave it blank.
Right.
That's just me.
No, understood. Yeah, that's got to be probably a challenging thing to be a violinist, to play, particularly on songs that you weren't on the original recording. You know, when to play, when to lay out, you know, when to improvise, when to do note for note by the original recording. How do you handle all of that?
Yeah, that's all done with a high degree of respect and humility. I was very careful about what I designated to be my part, because there's nothing worse. If you're a fan, there's nothing worse than, you know, hearing one of your favorite solos being being shown by someone else how much better it could have been if he had done it. You know,
Right.
there's nothing worse than that as a fan. So
Right.
I'm, you know, with a high degree of respect and humility that I go after those parts.
Right. And you do them so well too. So
No, thank you.
thank you. Moving on to last song, I think on the first side would have been another one written by you and Steve, Black Fathom 4. How did this one sort of come together?
Well, I wrote the little middle section, I guess you'd call it a round. Phil starts it with a kind of it all of a sudden makes a departure, and Phil starts the section with a more frenetic beat.
Right.
And then I think it's a 3-part round. Me and Rich and Steve. That was my contribution, and I can't remember exactly how I left rehearsal going, ooh, I know what I need, you know, to go home and hammer that out. But we all really dug the song itself. You know, heavy.
Yeah, this one gets
pretty heavy tune.
it gets real heavy in the middle. I think that
Yeah.
that round you mentioning is the first one, and then there's a second one that gets even just holy shit, even heavier. Like that might be, you know, the sort of closest to like metal maybe Kansas would get. Again, did Steve provide the lyrics to this one?
Yeah. He wrote the song, and then I inserted that little middle section.
Okay, gotcha.
And you know, I inserted it. It was inserted by the band. I presented it, and the band said, "Okay, let's make this work."
Right. Did you have any sort of trepidation about doing those kind of things? So, you know.
No, I figured the worst they could do is say no.
Right.
And come to think of it, I think they did. I think there were a couple of more offerings that I came up with that they did go no.
Right. Right.
And that's the worst that you know, you hear something that you think might work, you offer it, and they're not gonna. I don't think they'd fire me over that. I think that, you know, they'll just not do it.
Right.
And that's, you know.
That's probably funny too, because then you still hear it kind of that way, and then you would have to perform it later. Like, oh, we should have went. Like it'd be hard to release, you know, your vision of where it could have went. No.
No, but that's not healthy anyway.
Right.
There may have been one or two of those, but yeah, you can you know, you don't want to carry something like that to your grave.
No doubt. Yeah, you would drive yourself crazy.
Just let it go.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of, I guess Steve Walsh's lyrics are, sometimes they're pretty direct. Sometimes they're poetic, and sometimes they're kind of dark and things. Any sense of what this song is about?
No.
No?
You know, I never asked. If I had liked the song less,
Right.
I might have said, "What is this song about anyway?" But it's such a good song that I didn't care what it was about.
Right.
It was, very impactful and rocked your face off, and that was enough.
Yeah, yeah. I always wonder what happened with Black Fathom 1, 2, and 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I have lain awake at night going, well, who was Black Fathom 1?
Right. I'm not alone in that. It's a bunch of these songs are interesting. Are you familiar with his Glossolalia album?
No, but I really need to be, because I've heard many people speak very highly of it.
Yeah, it kind of goes. It sort of takes You know, because these are kind of stripped out and sort of rocking songs, and it takes that like a step further. Like you can hear the formation of that here in these songs, I think. Yeah, if you haven't heard it, I recommend it highly.
Yeah, I really need to, because I've heard too many people speak very highly of that record.
Moving on, the next song is another co-write by you and Steve, would be Under the Knife.
My love was in vain, sanctuary, under the night, sharp and shiny, repair, redeem, resurrection, yeah. Under the night, they'll cut you out of reach. Maybe dreams can be larger than life. Under the night.
Any sort of thoughts about this? This one I always thought this was maybe about a root canal, lyrically speaking. Have you ever heard that?
But, you know, I never asked him, but to me, it was the surgical removal of a lost love.
Right.
That a love that you retain that is beyond your ability to keep because she has moved on, but
Right.
she's, and that one line, under the knife, they'll cut you out of me,
Right.
is what gave me that impression.
Yeah.
I really liked that song. And it was a fun song to write. Steve and I had a really good time. We actually did a video in Steve's backyard. I'd love to see that video again. Steve had a really nice camera.
Right.
And he had a hot tub, and we filled it up with dry ice, and I was playing guitar with a surgeon's gown and mask. And it was kind of clever. I mean, it was incredibly low budget, but it was very clever and fun to watch.
And it's never. I don't think I've ever seen that. Is it ever?
I don't think it ever saw the light of day. I mean, Steve carried it around for a little while, and I can't remember if he brought it out on the road, but I remember watching it and it was fun to watch.
Right.
It was cleverly done. If there had been a budget behind it, it would have been a really good video. You know,
Right.
and this was back when videos were still very cool.
Do you remember how the co-write happened, or?
Oh gosh, let me think of what I did. I don't. Boy, I can't. I'd almost have to pull it out and listen to it. I don't remember what I wrote in that song, but it's one of my favorite songs on the record.
Yeah. Yeah, and you would do, at the time there's one show on YouTube that's worth checking out. I think it's from Wisconsin from '95, and you do like 3 or 4 of these songs from this record, and as much energy as they have on the record live, it's like a whole other level. So anybody listen, I recommend checking that out. The next song, another Steve one, sort of a real interesting kind of sparsely arranged song, is Need.
Could read my mind. I need to pitch it all into the wind. I need to face a wall that's caving in. I need to fall again. I need you.
If I remember correctly, it happened down in Trinidad. I think he wrote that song in Trinidad, and I think he was influenced by the not the climate, but the character of the country.
Right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, this one has lots of like interesting percussion on it. Maybe.
Yeah, and I think there was going to be an attempt to do some of. They had a steel drum in the studio, and I think there was going to be an attempt to do some of that finally just got passed over.
Right.
And it was the closest thing really to kind of like a hit kind of a tune. It was very cool. I remember we all kind of were like, wow, that is pretty cool.
Yeah. So he just showed up one day with, hey, I have this new song, guys.
Now,
do you know if that's...
I'm pretty sure we were down there. I'm almost positive that song was written in Trinidad.
Right. Do you know if is that Phil pretty much handling all that percussion?
It has to be.
Right. Yeah, because there's a lot going on in that song. Really great one. Yeah, moving on, the next track, written by yourself, Steve, and Phil Ehart, is the title track. Kind of this explosive, like tour de force, if you will, Freaks of Nature.
That opening riff, I came up with that. Just a cool thing to do on guitar. It involves a bunch of pull-offs, and it just lays out real well.
Right.
I expanded on that a little bit. Played it for Steve. It might have been in the dressing room. Something like that, and he had me record. He hauled me over to his house and had me record that opening figure, and then sent me home.
Right.
And then he constructed the verses and brought me over the next day, and he was like, "What do you think of this?" And I was, wow, because it makes such an abrupt change that works so incredibly well from all that frenzy into a really well-constructed verse, with the na, 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 all that stuff going on. And then it goes back into the riff.
There's a really nice sort of escalating, climbing, like violin in this as well.
Yeah, the little middle section, that came about in a rehearsal, and I remember it was the whole band. Especially Richard. I played that by accident, and Rich was like, "Yep, right there. Remember that." And we worked our way into the little solo section, and there again is another one of Richard's epic moments. Have I got the right song?
Yeah, Freaks of Nature. Yep, I believe so.
The middle section is is that correct?
Yes. Freaks of Nature.
Okay, and then it goes into the solo section, and that may be my favorite violin solo of all time.
Nice.
Richard does his solo, and then it comes into the very short violin solo, and I had no idea what to do. It came time. All right, play a solo. And here again is one of those things where I don't want to just sit there and play a bunch of licks, which is kind of the direction I was going in. And Richard kind of grabbed control of the situation and said, no. And he coached me through that solo. And it's maybe my favorite solo I've ever taken.
It's a really, really great one. We haven't.
That happened at like 2 a.m.
That's maybe the best time to get inspired, right?
Yeah. Well, Richard was inspired. I wasn't. I was really kind of struggling with that spot because it's frantic. You get and it comes into the collapsing orchestra. Steve was really good at doing a collapsing orchestra kind of a thing. And I was really, really struggling. And thanks, Rich, for getting me through that solo.
Nice.
That was fun.
Yeah, we haven't really mentioned Billy Greer a lot, but obviously a solid, locking in with Phil's solid rhythm section.
As solid as you could ask for.
Right, and
what a marvelous singer,
Right.
What a great voice.
Yeah, how's it been working with him?
Oh, Billy, I mean, he's the easiest guy to work with ever. It all just rolls off his back, whatever. He never gets excited. He never gets too wrapped up in anything. It just he makes it work.
That's cool.
He's very even-tempered. I think he has a degree in psychology, which he has to employ often with us. I'm sure there's a lot of analysis going on that we know nothing about, and he's as solid a bottom end as you could ask for. I mean, there's probably the reason you don't talk about him is because there's nothing wrong.
Right. So moving on, the next track is one written by Kerry Livgren, and that's "Cold Gray Morning." Do you remember how?
Yeah.
Do you remember how a Kerry song sort of showed up in the picture?
It was presented, do it if you want to, and Phil broke it out, and then I heard it for the first time when we were in Trinidad, and I went up to, there was a room upstairs where I could, try to craft together a little violin part, and we worked it up and did it. It wasn't a. I mean, because we were learning as a band, we were learning a song. We didn't. Here's the song. Make it work.
Right.
So everyone kind of crafted their own part. We got together and hammered stuff out. Wait a minute, why don't you do this here instead of there? And not so much that, but some of that. And worked it up in a day, I guess. After we had become, familiarized ourselves with the song and what we thought we were expected to do, and we were real pleased with that one.
Yeah, it's beautiful. How much, when you get the song from Kerry, how much of it is already written? Like the opening bit,
it was a complete song, and we very artistically covered it. I mean, it sounded very much like what we did, but we each in our own way did our own thing.
Right.
We didn't learn any. I don't think anyone learned an exact part, but we, the intro was the intro, and we did it, but we did it our own way, and almost verbatim, but not quite.
Right.
And the verses are the same, but not. We, once again, we did them our own way, and it was, I think, one of the really fine moments on that record.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the violin melody right off the bat is just gorgeous, and as soon as you hear it, even if you weren't aware that it was written by Kerry Livgren, you could it feels like, sort of vintage Kansas, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Just a really fantastic song. Had you ever, so you mentioned that you heard Kansas on the radio and they were, at least somewhat to credit for your enthusiasm around the violin. Had you ever seen them in the 70s?
No.
No?
No, I lived in Columbus, and it was every once in a while, a bunch of us would throw in a bunch of money and buy some tickets and make a pilgrimage up to Atlanta to see someone, but I never did get to see Kansas. It never worked out.
So the first time you saw them live was from the stage. You were in the band.
Yeah, that was my first Kansas show was on stage. I mean,
That's
I
pretty-
always wanted to see them, but I always either missed them or just couldn't afford it. You know,
Right.
high school kid, you know.
That's really cool.
I remember one time they were playing at Alex Cooley's in Atlanta, and I just didn't have the cash to go.
Right. So rounding out the album, the last song, another Steve song, a very, very emotional vocal, peaceful and warm. Any sort of memories about recording this one?
I remember, and I have a photo of this somewhere. Richard and Billy and I, you know, doing the verses. I played that whole song on acoustic violin, and I have a photo of that. My camera got stolen when we were down there. We had to go do the NAMM show in the middle of that whole thing, and I left my camera down there, and it got stolen, and there was a completely full but empty roll of film. And I mean, I had photo documented the entire thing up to that point. I mean, I had just great shots. The vocals were all cut in a choir loft that they had in this studio, and I had photos of Steve singing his butt off up in the choir loft, and gone.
Oh, man.
I was so disappointed. But I did have a photo of that. It was fun to put together because it's fragile, you know. An acoustic tune like that always is. And then, of course, the big bombastic fade out ending at the end was very cool.
Yeah,
It's hard to play that the arpeggiated line that I'm doing was really difficult.
How so?
For me, anyway.
How so?
It covers a lot of ground. It requires a lot of shifting, and I had to overdub it, so that meant I had to play it in tune, and it's difficult to play.
Right. Well, it just my sort of note or thought about that is that Violet just sings, and that, you know, it's just beautiful. So thank you for the hard work on it, you know, because it's very much appreciated.
Oh, it was fun. I mean, we had a great time. I mean, like I said, you know, we're kind of down there in paradise for it's quasi-paradise. I mean, it's paradise with a financially challenged paradise.
Gotcha.
Paradise. I mean, there was about half a mile, maybe not that far from the studio. There was a huge 7 square mile park called the Savannah, and they would you could go down to the Savannah, and they'd have these trucks pulled up to the side of the park where they sold coconuts, and they'd split them open for you. They'd cut the top off of them with a machete, and then carve out a little place where you could put your lip, and you drink the water out of it, and then hand the coconut back to them, and they'd quarter it up for you, and you could scoop out the ooze on the inside.
Right.
And I did that 2 or 3 times a day.
Great memory.
Coconuts and mangoes. Billy and Greg Robert and I were in a house that was right off the studio grounds, and we had 2 mango trees, and you could just pick them up off the ground. One of the guys told me what to do. You pick them up off the ground, put them in a paper sack, put them in the refrigerator overnight, and boy, were they good. You just, you know, carve them open and have a go.
That's cool. Yeah, you mentioned Greg Robert. We hadn't mentioned him yet. He also played keyboards on this record, and he was doing the club era touring and stuff like that. Any sort of memories about working with him?
Greg's an amazing guy. He's one of these people that have amazing other skills. He was a brilliant electrician. So when gear would fail on the road, we called him Mr. Wizard. The best Greg Roberts story I can remember is we were on one of those buses, and on this run we were stuck in kind of a clunker, and it was the guy was having trouble shifting gears. There was something wrong down in the gearbox or with the I don't know what it was, and
right.
We got stuck on the side of the road, and we had been sitting there for maybe an hour and a half, and nothing was happening, and we really needed to get to wherever it was we were going. And finally, the bus driver comes back on. He's got his shirt off, and he's covered with grease, and he's, I'm going to have to call for help. And Greg just stood up and, damn it, and took his shirt off and crawled down under there. And 15 minutes later, we were on our way.
That's a guy you want on your bus, right?
He was an amazing guy, and he was the tour manager for that 6-year period.
No, I didn't know that.
And he did a great job. He was something else.
Wow. So yeah, that's Freaks of Nature, sort of track by track, and just kind of a few follow-up questions about sort of where Kansas is now. And I should point out, I guess I didn't say this in the beginning, it's the 20th anniversary of this record, which is kind of why I wanted to talk to you about it.
I didn't even put that together.
Right, there you go.
I did not even put that together. How about, golly, 20 years? My gosh.
20 years, David. We're getting old. Right?
Yeah.
Kind of quite famously, Steve Walsh has since left the group, and you have a new vocalist, Ronnie Platt. Obviously, Ronnie Platt is just stellar. If you're a Kansas fan and you haven't seen sort of the new lineup, you're really missing out. I sort of went to see you guys with him and didn't have high or low expectations. I was like, okay, well, let's just see, and boy, he blew me away. Just great.
He is something else, man.
Yeah. And, kind of, I think probably similar to the way I categorized, you coming into the band and there being a surge of energy, I think, Ronnie's done that, in today's Kansas as well. Do you feel that?
It has become much more energetic and enthusiastic, and that is not a slight against Steve at all.
Oh no, of course not.
But when someone comes in with that much enthusiasm, this is his dream gig. I mean, this is he probably sat in his bedroom singing Kansas songs, pretending to be Steve Walsh.
Right.
And he's remarkably suited for the position. And if you're going to lose your lead singer, you want someone like Ronnie to fill in, fill the hole, because he's a great guy. He's just a wonderful guy, and they're full of energy. Has the utmost respect for the material and the utmost respect for Steve, and is very faithful to his interpretation.
Right.
Is always with Steve in mind. It's fun. There is indeed a new energy and enthusiasm.
How hard was it to see Steve leaving?
It wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't entirely unexpected. He hadn't expressed, but he had communicated through body language that he was just maybe a little tired of it.
Right.
And I understand that. I mean, those are incredibly physically demanding. And he's playing all the keyboard parts and singing all the vocal parts, and it wasn't entirely unexpected.
Right.
It was feared. In the back of your mind, it's like, God, what do we do if this guy leaves? And to have Ronnie come walking in, it was like, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And then our ex lighting director, David Mannion, is also a very fine keyboard player. And so between Ronnie and Steve was having to play 2 keyboard parts all by himself.
Right.
So you become selective at what you prioritize. But and Ronnie's a fine keyboard player. So with that taking place, all of a sudden now all the keyboard parts are back.
Right.
And fairly faithfully, because Steve was having to kind of pick and choose which part do I, what what of both parts can I do myself? And if I can't do that, which one do I select, you know?
Right. While singing.
He had that, yeah, while singing. Incredibly difficult parts, you know?
Right, right.
So, it's now everybody just plays their part, you know, and it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Not only is it a lot of fun, but, you know, as we alluded to earlier, and I'm super excited about this, is that you guys have begun to record a new record.
Yes, we have.
How great is that?
It's great. Everyone's real excited. Everyone has ideas, you know, from, you know, just little tiny, I'm a little tiny section guy, you know, that seems to be the main thing that I show up with is like a middle section or a solo section or maybe a transition.
Right.
But I know Billy has whole songs. I know Ronnie has whole songs. And the band has the ability to take very small ideas and make very large things from them. So we're real excited.
That's really great.
We're very excited, and we've signed with Inside Out, and they're excited, and we're taking November off to craft together a pack of songs and make an album out of it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think you're shooting for early 2016.
That sounds right.
Yeah, spring or summer.
It sounds maybe a little optimistic, but yeah, okay.
I think your management said maybe middle, maybe spring, summer of 2016.
Early 2016 would be really ambitious. I'm not saying we couldn't do it.
I'm leaning on you, David. Come on, man. I think that's I'm certainly looking forward to that very much, and this is there any an interesting thing about Kansas is, I think, and so you have Freaks of Natures. It's a very Steve oriented album. Like he wrote, the lion's share, and then the next record was Somewhere Elsewhere.
Yeah, he wrote 75% of the records. Yeah.
Right. And then Somewhere Elsewhere was all Carrie songs. So there always seems to have been that creative, like either it's a Steve or it's a Carrie. But I think the vintage Kansas was sort of the combination of the two.
Richard is underlooked in a lot of that.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of early Kansas that I can point a finger at Rich.
Right.
And go, that's him.
Yeah, he sort of wrote the song that led to their deal. Can I Tell You Something? Right. I think he wrote that one, Rich.
I'm sure he wrote part of it, and there are the riffs, the heavily riff oriented stuff. I'm pretty sure that's Rich.
Right. But
a lot of that.
Right.
Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it.
But I guess kind of wrapped in all that rambling was, on the new record, is there any, I wouldn't say obligation, is there any thought that, we should have a Steve song or we should have a Carrie song, or the opposite? Hey, let's just do our own songs.
If there were a Steve contribution or a Carrie contribution, I know for a fact it would be paid serious attention to.
Right.
I know. I know all of us would go, well, let's take a listen to that.
Right. Right. Well, naturally. Well, that's cool. I'm very much looking forward to it. We didn't actually mention, but you have a solo album as well, David and Goliath.
Yeah, I do.
And that's
or did.
Well, it's still available on your website.
It's
right?
Still available. Yeah, it is still available.
I proudly have a copy.
Yeah. Which reminds me, I need to put a copy of that aside for Ronnie. Ronnie hadn't heard it yet. Glad you reminded me.
There you go. So that your website is davidragsdale.com, of course. And it's available there. And for anything Kansas, you'll go to...
Graciously run for me by Missy Ross.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Missy. And, of course, for anything Kansas, you would go to kansasband.com. And you guys are pretty consistently on the road. You said you're taking off November, but almost 2 or 3 weekends a month, if not more. You're sort of out there on the road playing all parts of the country. And, like I said, with renewed energy with Ronnie Platt. So, if Kansas comes to your area, absolutely check them out because, they're firing on all cylinders.
Actually, this year we will end up having played almost 80 shows.
Wow.
So got a good chance to check it out if you want to.
Yeah. And presumably that won't slow down. Once the new record comes out, you'll be out there playing that as well. Another cool thing about that I've noticed since Ronnie joined is, you're sort of learning new songs from the catalog. How does that feel to play songs maybe you hadn't touched before?
Oh, well, it's a lot of fun, and a lot of those for very obvious reasons were kind of put on the shelf. I mean, they're incredibly demanding vocally,
right?
Physically, and when you're doing, when you're touring and you're playing what is already a demanding set, you tend to shy away from those that are like really physically demanding,
right?
Parts, and so we're able to bring those back, and also it's the 2 keyboard player thing again,
right?
They really require those parts to play convincingly, and
right.
with 2 keyboard players, hey, why not? So yeah, we're able to expand the song list and do stuff a couple of songs that I've never done with the band.
That's great.
Closet Chronicles, I've never done that song. Reason to Be, I'd never heard that song.
Wow, right, from Monolith. That's a great one.
Yeah. There's another one that I had never played before. It's having played an awful lot of the same material for a pretty long time, wow, this is cool.
Right.
To do something I'd never done before. It's fun, and I'm sure there will be a whole lot more of it.
Happy to hear that. Can we get a song from Audio Visions aside from Hold On one of these days?
You never know. You're talking to the wrong guy.
Yeah, that was my first concert ever was Audio Visions, and while I love Hold On, I was like, oh, just something, Relentless or No One Together, just one other song from Audio Visions, but maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday.
So, well, David, thank you so much for looking back at Freaks of Nature with me. I very much appreciate it and love this record. And
it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation.
And thanks for the years of music and for the years to come. And hopefully, I will see you out on the road later this year or into 2016. So,
well, be sure to come say hi when you do.
So thank you for listening to my conversation with David Ragsdale. It was a real treat. I want to thank David for taking the time to speak with me. The websites, again, are Kansas Band, and davidragsdale.com. You can check out his solo album on there as well, and hopefully pick up the new Kansas record when it hits shelves. Although records don't hit shelves anymore, really, do they? But you know what I'm saying. So hope you'll tune into more Pods and Sods on the Pods and Sods Network. You can find us on the Facebooks. You can find us on the interwebs and on iTunes and on what else? Stitcher. You can find us on Podomatic, which is our host, and you can find us on podsodcast.blogspot.com, where all the episodes are listed and tagged and things like that. So, you can also check out other Kansas interviews there as well. Billy Greer and Steve Morse and more coming, hopefully. So, having said all that, I would like to close with some words of wisdom that I find extremely powerful, and I like to perpetuate them in the cosmos whenever I can. Some words from Mr. Bill Hicks. Thank you.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.